Hall, and welcome everyone. My name is Kevin Bielicki, and I'm an analyst at Flashpoint based in New York City. My colleague, Austin Turecek, and I are very excited to be speaking with you all today about the importance of cybersecurity in the maritime industry. Specifically, we will be discussing how Austin and my colleagues use Flashpoint collections to find threats to the maritime industry, specifically those targeting and originating from Asia. Before we begin, just a short introduction about ourselves. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Kevin Bielicki, and I'm an analyst here at Flashpoint focusing on counterterrorism and physical security. However, I also do a lot of work involving database breaches and Chinese language research as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Austin Turecek. I'm an analyst at Flashpoint working with the Tactical Threat Monitoring team. My specialties are generally focused more towards the technical side, working with information stealing malware, the recent trends related to ransomware and extortion gangs, as well as digital defense and penetration testing techniques and methods. So today we'll talk about some of the basic tenets that we can use to secure our systems within the maritime industry and how threat intelligence plays a role in that. Before we do that, though, we wanted to lay a little groundwork for what Flashpoint kind of grabs its information from, and Flashpoint collects information from a huge number of sources throughout the deep and dark web and other sources where threat actors may lie. You can see we have a huge store of stolen credentials that we're continually updating to ensure that our clients and those that we work with are not at risk. We also collect on a huge number of illicit marketplaces and forums where threat actors speak and engage with one another, sharing their tactics, techniques, and procedures. And while some organizations may be focused on specific regions, we do take a very holistic approach. You can see we have a number of languages, including Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Russian, Ukrainian, and over 20 other languages. So with that, let's talk about one of the largest threats we're seeing right now. As with most industries, maritime and logistical industries are seeing heavy impact from the current activity related to ransomware and extortion gangs. So this is a dashboard that Flashpoint maintains where we collect information on the various ransomware and extortion gangs. And you can see this is about the last 90 days. And in that 90 days, there had been around 400 reported breaches. And a notable portion of this, I believe there were around 20 or 30, included the organizations listing in maritime and logistical. And even in the past presentation, we saw out of the 4 major shipping organizations, at least 3 of them have already been hit with ransomware. And from a maritime and logistical standpoint, these groups are incredibly dangerous. For an industry that's based on the constant movement of product and the constant flow of their vessels, extortion gangs and ransomware gangs have a huge opportunity to potentially make massive payouts simply because any downtime and any halting of the system is incredibly damaging to an organization's bottom line. So let's take a look at a couple examples that we've collected on. So this was an example from May of 2021, so only several months ago, where a threat actor on one of the high-tier forums we collect on was selling access to a maritime company with the specific branch they breached was in Singapore, but they had branches in India, Malaysia, and were headquartered in Norway. You can see just based off of the basic information they provided, they had a lot of information such as employee information, total systems, as well as the revenue of the company. Now, this type of access is incredibly valuable to some of these more advanced extortion and ransomware gangs because they would purchase some access like this and use it to spread their malware and cause further damage within an environment.
Sorry, can we just... Sorry, Austin, it's Ewan speaking. I just wanted to take an opportunity to interrupt. Could you just go back one slide? Because I know that among the 70, 80 plus members of the audience here, a lot of you are genuinely seeking examples of how this is relevant to your home market, okay? And for those of our invitees who are from the likes of PIL, MPA, PSA, just wanted to focus on this particular slide because it showcases how a Singaporean maritime company, right, headquartered in Norway, has got a threat like this in their inbox that their IT teams, their senior level leadership, their C-level suite has to actually handle and manage probably before it gets to the press, okay? And this isn't just to show that they've got capability and cap in this particular type of sector, but it's to show that this can happen to anyone. We were speaking with with Patrick Lim, CEO for BH Global, just before this session, our rehearsal, and he brought up a very good point just now, which is shipping's something that transcends geography, right? 90% of the ships in the world are headquartered in the Marshall Islands and Liberia, okay? So it doesn't matter that if it's something from Singapore, if it doesn't matter that if it's something living Jurong Port, which is not far away from us, or even in Tokyo, in the Tsukiji market, it doesn't matter, okay? If a ship is seen to not have enough cybersecurity implemented, starting from 21st January of this year, the IMO has said that there's the chance that it can be prevented from leaving port, okay? And I know this is like GDPR, right? We've all heard the story. We're all waiting for the first MNC to sort of be highlighted, probably after an earnings call, probably after an end of quarter like yesterday. And for many of the larger companies out there, I know because you have told us at Athena, right, that you are concerned about how this is a real and present danger to your company. So what IMO needs and what they've said is that if a company can demonstrate that they've got sufficient effects taken to preventing a cybersecurity attack, then they will not take action against these ships leaving port. And I know that many of you here are also waiting for Bureau Veritas, who's going to talk a bit about compliance with Philippe in just a moment. But I just wanted to pause on this particular example because it really showcases how relevant threat intel actually is to your business, not someone else's business, but your business today. Thank you, Austin. Back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very important to consider when looking at the entire kind of lifespan of a breach. There's a lot of points where you can catch it, and there's a lot of points where systems can fail. So in this case, clearly something in regards to the edge point security failed. However, if this was your organization, this is something that you could very quickly see and identify yourself and either engage with someone like Flashpoint to engage with this actor and potentially purchase the access from them, or even just lock up your own systems. So continuing, we have another example where TRT International, which provides development and application of repair solutions in engine, turbine, and aerofuel repairs, they had a database breach. And while a database breach may not sound as potentially damaging as access to an entire environment, there's a lot of valuable information that threat actors could take with this. Rather than targeting TRT directly, they may now look to target potential clients and third-party organizations, essentially making yourself a vulnerability to those that you work with. And this was another sample we found where access to a freight company worth about $13 billion is being sold by a high-tier Russian speaking threat actor. Now, you can see here they've collected a lot of information, such as where they're operating, such as the operation levels of the organization. But what's really interesting is the asking price here, $8,000. Now, $8,000 may not seem like a very large amount, or may seem like a large amount for an individual to purchase, but it's important to remember the potential payout that these ransomware and extortion gangs make. $8,000 to them is nothing when you consider payments are upwards of multi-millions of dollars. Again, looking at this type of situation, the entire lifespan of an attack, if this was an organization that seemed similar to yours, you had similar revenue or similar access points, this is an important thing to keep in mind in regards to kind of cutting off that attack chain or as early as possible. So now we're going to pass it to Kevin, and he's going to talk about several ways in which maritime organizations can look to protect themselves, leveraging both cyber intelligence and other just cybersecurity best practices.
Thanks, Austin. After much thought, Austin and I created a list of 4 ways maritime companies can reduce the risk of ending up like one of the companies mentioned earlier. All of these were meant to be cost-effective, easy to understand, and high impact. So, without further ado, the first, and arguably most important tenet, is using a password manager throughout your company. Password managers work by storing a user's login information for their website or internal tools, and then help the user log in automatically, saving time and money. It also prevents password reuse and protects your company from being affected by an unrelated database breach. This is best illustrated by the recent Colonial Pipeline hack. Russian hackers used an account found in a database breach to access the company's VPN, despite the fact that the account belonged to an employee who is no longer with Colonial Pipeline. The Colonial Pipeline hack cost the company $5 million, which was mostly retrieved, but also cost an incalculable amount of damage to the reputation. The cost of a leading password management tool, by comparison, is $8 a month per user. It also helps to have an intelligence vendor that tracks database breaches, such as Flashpoint. At Flashpoint, we have a collection of breaches totaling 37 billion accounts and can notify your team if a password or email of yours ends up in a breach. The second tenet Austin and I came up with is the importance of maintaining regular patch cycles. With new patches may cause problems in an organization's IT infrastructure. Patching systems in a timely manner reduces the likelihood of an incident. At Flashpoint, we recommend, rather than making a department responsible for patching, assigning individuals the responsibility of patching ensures accountability when patch deadlines are missed. Without ownership, patch management is a task executed by many but owned by no one. The third principle Austin and I would like to speak with you about today is the importance of maintaining offline backups. Austin and I both believe a story about Maersk, the famous Danish shipping company I'm sure you're all aware of, drives this point home. In 2017, Maersk fell victim to the NotPetya attack unleashed by Russia. NotPetya ripped through the victim's internal networks, and despite IT employees at Maersk literally running into meetings and unplugging computers to save devices, Maersk lost nearly all of their 150 domain controllers. Wired published an article in 2018, and I selected a quote from the article you can see on your screens. I'm going to read the quote because I believe it really drives home the severity of the risk Maersk faced. Maersk's 150 or so domain controllers were programmed to sync their data with one another so that, in theory, any of them can function as a backup for all the others. But that's a centralized backup strategy hadn't taken account for one scenario, where every domain controller is wiped simultaneously. If we can't recover our domain controllers, a Maersk IT staffer remembers thinking, we can't recover anything. Thankfully for Maersk, although it didn't seem like it at the time, they were very lucky. There had been a blackout in Ghana, which caused one computer with the company's domain controller to remain offline. Maersk needed that computer to be flown to London, where IT specialists were building back Maersk one step at a time. However, no one at the Ghana office had a visa to enter the UK, so Maersk had to pay for a Ghanaian employee to fly to Nigeria, pass the computer to a Nigerian colleague, and then have them fly to London with the computer. I hope this case study illustrates the importance of maintaining offline backups, too, if possible. Lastly, all companies should have regular war games and simulations, and establish best practices by doing the following shown on the screen. Strong companies are built on a teamwork mentality, and it's important for companies to establish practices so that even employees on the lowest rung of the proverbial ladder know what to do in case of an emergency. Similar to a fire drill, when everyone is able to act on their own confidently, you reduce the risk of having to pay for remedial costs associated with a breach to your system. Everyone, thank you all for taking the time to listen to Austin and my presentation. We hope you feel more confident now on how to secure your maritime businesses.